If you're praying for your child to pass their GCSE Maths, then I've got 5 tips, including one bonus tip that will help them succeed. Children have been failing their GCSE Maths in record numbers over the past few years, and I think that's down to 2 main reasons. First reason being confidence, and the second reason being a lack of basic skills. If we take a look at the list of grades a child could achieve at GCSE, the highest grade they can achieve if they're doing a higher paper would be a level 9. And this goes all the way down to a level 1. If you're doing a foundation paper, you're going to be capped at level 5, and 4 is a pass. If I went to any primary school and I asked one of the year 6 students, a strong year 6 student, to do a GCSE paper, I think most of them would actually end up somewhere around there, a level 2 or a 3. So that's telling me that a lot of students that are coming out of primary school or they're going into secondary school and they're not getting the basics learned. Either they're not being in the right learning environment, whether that's because of behavior in the classroom, or they don't have a proper teacher that's qualified to teach them properly, or the child is just struggling and they've disengaged with the subject totally and they've just switched off anytime they come into a math lesson. The reason why children are struggling with confidence is because of the people that are around them, their parents, their peers, and their teachers. The parents will say to them, oh, I used to find maths really difficult when I was a child and I really struggle with it and algebra is really hard. They're going to be passing down false narratives and false self-beliefs that the child will believe later on. Their peers will maybe be ahead of them. They might be getting higher scores in the test. They might be learning things a little bit quicker. The teacher might say one day, oh, I don't think maths is your best subject. I think English or science is maybe your best subject. You might not be so good at maths. It's okay to not be good at everything. But all of these build up a false narrative within that child's head that they believe that they cannot do maths. And that's what we need to change. We need to end these false narratives and we need to start putting more beneficial ideas into their heads. So let's go through the tips I think would help get your child that pass. How can we support our children then? The first thing that I would recommend is make sure that your child knows what the basics are. So do they know how to add, take away, multiply, divide? Can they do it with large numbers? Do they know their times tables? Can they handle all of these with worded questions? And then once they've proceeded with that, then you can move on to other topics. Once they've really mastered the basics, they can then move on to fractions, decimals, and percentages. They can also learn about ratio. And once they've completed these, I think most students would probably be getting a level 2 or a 3. After they've completed these, they can start looking at algebra, geometry, and data and probability. If I had a student that was struggling, I'd go through the maths probably in this order. The second thing that we can do with our children is have revision in small and consistent chunks. And that's done regularly and in a long period that's way before their exams. A lot of students will only start revising maybe 3 to 1 months before their exams. But if you're starting 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, 2 years earlier, then you're going to make a world of difference to them. So small, consistent chunks over doing large, long, arduous 3-hour sessions is much better. One way a child could achieve this is by doing a set of core bit maths questions. They could do 1 or 2 a day. And let's say a child is at foundation level, they might want to do the numeracy questions. They might want to do some of the foundation questions, and they might want to do some of the foundation plus questions and just see where they're at every single day. And then they could make a little note of what questions that they're struggling with and what questions that they're finding easy. That will be helpful for them to know what weaknesses that they currently have and where they don't need to be focusing on. They also have the answers there, and if you want a workbook, you can also get a workbook from there. Another way you could do this is by buying any CGP workbook or any other maths GCSE revision workbook and just give them 10 to 20 minutes every single day for them to brush up on the skills that they already know and then maybe start learning some new things. The third tip that I'm going to give you is use real exam questions. A lot of the time students will do some questions, whether it's on a screen or whether it's on a PowerPoint or in a book or somewhere, and they'll see the exact same questions in a GCSE exam and they'll just switch off. So one way you could approach this is this website called GCSE Maths Questions, where it has practically all of the GCSE Maths questions from past few years and it's sorted by topics. So you could click into one of the topics and it'd show you a bunch of different topics that they could focus on with exam questions from that topic. I would also recommend maybe every half term or so, depending what year your child is currently in, your child could do one set of past papers and you could see where their current level of competency is at. So you could do 2023 November, one half term, and then 2023 May or June for one half term. And then you can see, is the child making any progress between each half term? And if they're not, what's the reasons why? The fourth thing that we can do is ask our children to make sure that they are practicing everything. A lot of times, students will get very comfortable with what they're good at, and they'll just stick with those kind of things. So for example, they might just really enjoy just doing a little bit of fractions, decimals and percentages for their homework or their revision, but that's not where they're going to get extra marks. The extra marks that they're going to get is from the areas that they don't know. The areas that they do know, they're already getting those marks, so it's not really going to help them. A lot of students will also focus mainly on non-calculator work rather than calculator work. And typically most exam papers, 1/3 of the paper is non-calculator and 2/3 of the paper is calculator. You don't want a child that just feels happy being in their comfort zone all the time. You want them to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. So that means looking at the harder topics. It means looking at the more difficult levels. It may be even useful for them to look at the first part of a higher tier paper for them to get used to what the questions at the end of a foundation paper is like. One way a child could practice on their weaknesses is using this website called Maths Genie, where it has all of the topics and it's sorted by what grade it is. So if a child is currently at grade 3, you would just check and make sure that can they do everything up until grade 3, and then you could start looking at the topics after that. And if it's a foundation level student, you would want them to be able to do all of the topics up until grade 5. This website's really good because it's got videos that help you learn what the topic is about. It's got exam questions, and it's also got worked solutions, as you can see. So it's got all of these, which is very useful, and it's a free resource. And the final tip that I would give you is make sure that the child is getting some level of feedback. I just want to go into a little bit of detail about the levels of feedback a student could get. We're very lucky in this world of AI where we can just take a picture of something and ask AI to check it for us. Unfortunately, it's not always correct. I think it's probably the worst level of marking or feedback that your child could get at this moment, but I think maybe it might change in the future. The second level of marking that you could have is self-marking. So you ask the child to mark their own piece of work, look at where they've gone wrong, and see if they can make any changes to that. The third level of marking would be either an older sibling that would be good at maths maybe, or maybe a parent that has some history with maths would be preferable. Or if they're even not so comfortable with maths, maybe they need to brush up a little bit on it before they start helping the child. And finally, the final level of marking is probably a tutor or a teacher. If you can get a tutor or a teacher to mark the piece of homework, it's going to be very useful for you because you're going to get actionable feedback. We actually have a service on our website called Mark a Mock where we provide actionable and useful feedback for our students so that they can see exactly where they're going wrong and what things that they could do to help them improve their grades. I did say that I would give one final bonus tip, and the final bonus tip is the parental mindset. As teachers, tutors, and parents, we want to try and create a calm and stable environment where the student feels okay with making mistakes so that they don't feel any pressure. We want to keep the stakes low and we want to celebrate any progress rather than perfection that the child is making. Just think about a flower growing. If you speak kindly and gently and softly to the flower will actually grow quicker than if you don't speak to it at all. So think about the way your words could impact your child's growth and progress. That's the end of the tips for today. I'd recommend you check out my channel for more tips for parents and walkthroughs for GCSEs and 11+ exams. If you have any more questions about motivating kids or you're struggling on helping them pass their GCSE Maths, just get in touch with me here or through my website in the link below. I'll see you soon.